All right, time for another deep work session. So, again, to add on to the theory, I saw a beautiful example, or we actually in the Discord as well saw a beautiful example of Bitcoin, where we talked about it, of course, in the in the thing as well, in the forecast, I believe. Which right there we had the weekly Verweij gap sitting right there, also daily Verweij gaps, and we were sweeping that context high right there, and then creating that weekly Verweij gap to then continue lower a little bit, and we're seeing that huge rejection right there coming into the daily Verweij gaps, potentially coming into the weekly Verweij gaps, but this sweep again is what we talked about right there. That unusual context it creates. It adds on to the theory, which is absolutely beautiful. Love to see it. So let's see if we can find some more examples as well. On, I believe, quite a few pairs I had it actually going into this week, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Let's see if we can find the ones I meant. Might have been on the crosses. Let me see. Yeah, this was also one. Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar here was the same exact example where we do finish that context overall right there, as in we take that low. Afterwards, we do not respect that daily Verweij gap anymore, because then we are creating that weekly Verweij gap, which we are then preparing to trade into. Sort of the same example right there. Really interesting right here. So let's look at another few, because I believe there was another one. I'm not too sure, but I believe there was. Let me see. No, I don't believe this was one. Don't believe so. Could have been one if we shoot that low right there. Could have been sort of like the same, not very similar though. Yeah, Euro GBP was actually also one, where we had the daily Verweij gap sitting right there. Came into it, sweep this low, perfect lows by the way, really nice fake bottom right there. Sweeping that, after that creating that unusual context, and then already preparing price to trade into the weekly Verweij gap sitting right there. Really nice. It's beautiful price action actually. It's the theory I think again where the first video we or me especially was sort of struggling with that overall theory, as in I forgot it almost and I was too deep into the rabbit hole. But right now it's coming back to light, and I see it very almost every week right here, which is very nice. Right there. So into the weekly Verweij gap to potentially continue lower off that. Same thing happening right there. So basically, the last context before we create a weekly Verweij gap right there is where we just have to be careful, because we can trade towards it, but after that we usually create unusual context to then come into the weekly Verweij gap, which is really interesting overall. Was there another one? I don't believe so. Let me check. Quite annoying when it glitches like that. Or was it this one? Yeah, it was this one. I believe it was. Was it? New week hasn't opened yet, right? No. Yeah, it was. So here you have this daily Verweij gap right there, daily context, trading towards this low, sitting right there. And once we sweep that low, what do? Refer back to the weekly Verweij gap that is now being created right there. It's so interesting. It's such an interesting theory right there. I really like it. So here we are having that unusual context to potentially look to target right now that weekly Verweij gap, and off that weekly Verweij gap we can look for potential shorts. Really interesting price action. Really nice. Ooh. GBP Canadian dollar? No. Is this something? Wow, very small Verweij gap, if any Verweij gap right there. Well, it is a Verweij gap, but I would not count that. Really interesting price action, and we're seeing it over and over, which is really interesting. Really interesting. Why is euro New Zealand dollar? Oh, now it's open. Yeah, okay, now it's open. Nice. So that is really interesting. So let's look at a pair and let's go over it again. Let's actually look at the indices right now. Let's see if they have something as well. Let's see if they have something to tell us right here. Let's mark it some weekly fair value gaps. Let's see if it also happens on the indices. Gets created right there. Well, yeah, somewhat you could argue right there. I reckon ES or YM probably swept it low. I think, or I'm just assuming. No, ES right there did sweep that. So yeah, on ES it's the same exact thing. Really interesting. Really, really interesting. I love this theory. It's a really nice theory. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Let's see on the daily. No, it's the same context. It's the same context again, like we mentioned. Or is it the same context? No, that is a swing low right there. It's not technically not the same context. But we did not really take any context or anything, so... Same context. So when we have same context, it's going to trade into the weekly value gap. That's what we established as well. Right there. Really interesting because see the difference in candles when we did trade into the weekly value gap. Weekly value gap, look at this candle close right there. Candle close above the previous week low, below the previous week low right there. Below the previous week low right there as well. Really, and then we trade into the weekly value gap. Here, not below the previous week low close. Really, really interesting. Same for that for value gap, of course. It's so interesting. I like this. So then we have this weekly value gap as well, but that is not really something that is quite interesting. We trade after. Well, it could be interesting. I say that, but let's take a look at it, of course. Let's see. And we look at the other weekly value gap just had as well. Here we do not really follow through on this context overall. So this is not really where it happened right there. No. And how do we look at this weekly value gap right there? Daily. Here we did not do it as well. And we actually failed to come into the weekly value gap right there. Quite interesting. Let's see. I think by now, actually, we can definitely look to call this a discovery or a new theory, definitely. Here we do the same exact thing. We sweep those context lows right there to then target the weekly value gap overall. So by now, we can definitely say, yes, this is definitely a theory that we can work with. So we can add it to our arsenal, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that we can now take this into account. For example, on Bitcoin, we saw this right there where we would say, all right, we have this daily value gap right there, or the daily not following through. We have the weekly value gap below it. So we could target that daily low right there, potentially even lower, to then continue higher off that. So it's definitely something that I'm slowly looking here to integrate into my overall experience. It's one of the discoveries where you don't necessarily need to mechanically trade it, but this helps with bias, with context, with narrative. That is mainly what deep workspaces are also for. They are not necessarily to create a whole new strategy of it. No, they're there to add on to the overall understanding that you already had. Let's see. Here we did quite similar again, following through of the daily value gap right there, following through, and then we go into the weekly value gap. Here, same thing, following through, then coming into the weekly value gap. Really interesting right here. Really interesting. I want to see now on a different time frame though. Let's look at the monthly. And let's go to something like USD Canadian dollar. USD Canadian dollar. Let's look at USD Canadian dollar. Monthly fair value gap, weekly. Well, yes, we did sort of do the same right there because we had this context weekly to then come into it to then do the same thing right there. Really interesting. This one surprisingly did not come into the monthly value gap actually. Let's see. So did not do it right here. Then we would expect a higher price potentially right there, going into the monthly value gap, and we do not do that right there. Perfect. Let's see again on the monthly. Going to look at this example right here. Also want to take a quick look at this example, just because they played out right there. So I'm a little bit cherry picking, but overall, we can understand when they also don't play out, if that makes sense. Like we can see that, as in it's not a huge surprise if they don't play out, because usually it just lacks that context or something along those lines. Same context here, same context there. Not really relevant though. So not really relevant here. Same context as well. All right, perfect. So 3 monthly fair value gaps just completely disregarded. Let's look at this one right there. Let me see. It's sort of similar, but overall we did not even create a fair value gap before that, so not the greatest examples here. And you wouldn't really expect it on the monthly as well, I imagine, because it's just a lot of price action. As in, the monthly just can't really go back. There's of course monthly candles only. There are only so many monthly candles, if that makes sense. Monthly fair value gap. Quite similar, yes, right there, quite similar. Did not really come into a fair value gap though. Quite similar. I think we can pretty confidently say that the theory right here is definitely something. It's definitely something right here. It's just reinforcing the ID constantly right now. That's mainly it. But other than that, I think the theory is perfect. It's definitely perfect. We'd have to see though if we can refine right now. Here again, we have the same thing right there as well. Perfect. We have to see if we can refine right now the idea of when it does play out, when it doesn't play out, the small little details. So that is currently what I'm looking to work with as well. Can we pay attention to those small little details? Then I also have some ideas for other deep work sessions about sharp turns as well. And from there, we'll see. So quick deep work session, just a little update as well. But it's playing out a lot. And we can confidently say, yes, we can add this overall to our knowledge base. And let's see if we can add on to the idea, of course, because right now we have the basis, you could call it. And let's see if we can get the more details. When does it not play out? When does it play out? Things like that. All right, perfect. Thank you.